Over 12.5 million captured men, women, and children were put on ships in Africa between 1526 and 1867. Only 10.7 million survived to reach the Americas. That means 1.8 million people died during transport alone. But this number only tells part of the story. What you're about to learn will fundamentally change how you understand the economic foundation of the modern world. Let's start with the numbers that historians have painstakingly documented. For over 400 years, more than 15 million men, women, and children were victims of the transatlantic slave trade. But here's what's staggering. It's estimated that close to 20 million people were forced to leave the African continent enslaved, and by 1800, this had decimated the African population to half the size it would have been had slavery not occurred. Think about that. An entire continent's demographic trajectory was permanently altered. Nearly 2 million people died during the barbaric Middle Passage across the ocean, leaving the African continent destabilized and vulnerable to conquest and violence for centuries. This wasn't just about individual suffering. This was systematic continental destruction. Now, here's a critical fact that's often misunderstood. Various forms of slavery were practiced in diverse ways in different communities of West Africa prior to European trade, with indigenous slavery in locations like Ghana established by the 1st century AD. Some historians estimate that before the arrival of Europeans in the 15th century, Africans had sold upward of 11 million slaves to the Islamic world. But here's the crucial difference. Pre-European African slavery systems were fundamentally different from what Europeans created. Traditional African slavery often involved debt bondage, war captives, or temporary servitude. People could earn freedom, marry into families, and their children weren't automatically enslaved. What Europeans engineered was something unprecedented in human history: hereditary racial slavery for maximum economic extraction. Here's the part that will shock you. Slavery wasn't just morally wrong. It was the economic foundation of the modern world. Most European colonial economies in the Americas from the 16th through the 19th century were dependent on enslaved African labor for their survival. But the wealth creation went far beyond plantations. Eric Williams charged that black slavery was the engine that propelled Europe's rise to global economic dominance. Recent research proves this. By the 1830s, there was a strong correlation between slavery wealth and economic development in Britain. Slaveholding areas were less agricultural, closer to cotton mills, and had more property wealth. The profits from slave labor didn't just enrich individual plantation owners. They funded banks, insurance companies, shipping industries, and manufacturing. The capital accumulated from unpaid black labor became the foundation for industrial development in Europe and America. But here's what they don't teach you. Black people never stopped fighting back. More rebellions on slave ships occurred when there were large numbers of African women aboard. Enslaved Africans destroyed equipment, escaped in massive numbers, formed maroon communities, and organized sophisticated rebellions that struck terror into slave-owning societies. The Haitian Revolution alone proved that enslaved people could overthrow their oppressors and create independent nations. The myth of passive acceptance is exactly that, a myth. Every day of slavery involved resistance, from work slowdowns to armed uprisings. The system required constant violence and surveillance precisely because black people never accepted their bondage. While black families were building wealth for others, they were systematically prevented from accumulating their own. After emancipation, Jim Crow laws, redlining, and discriminatory practices continued this economic extraction. Conservative estimates suggest that the unpaid labor of enslaved people generated trillions in today's dollars, wealth that was never returned to their descendants. So, when we talk about slavery, we're not just talking about a moral wrong that happened centuries ago. We're talking about the systematic extraction of human labor that built the wealth of nations while devastating an entire continent. We're talking about resistance that was erased from history books. The real story behind slavery isn't just about suffering. It's about the theft of human potential on a continental scale, the resistance that never stopped, and the wealth that was built on black backs but never returned to black hands. This is the history they didn't want you to know, and now you know why. If you found this video insightful, then please subscribe and join our community.